The low, electric hum of 300 humming server racks vibrated through the epoxy floor of the Apex Horizon logistics plant, a sound that usually lulled me into a sense of precise, mechanical control. Outside, a ruthless Midwestern downpour battered the rusted corrugated roof of our industrial park facility, threatening to drown out the constant whir of the heavy-duty cooling turbines fighting the oppressive humidity. My name is Nora, a 48-year-old lead systems architect whose knee joints crack like dry twigs whenever the barometric pressure drops before a storm. For nearly 2 decades, I have single-handedly engineered and maintained the digital backbone that keeps this entire regional shipping hub from collapsing into absolute logistical chaos. Officially, my title on the organizational chart is Senior Network Administrator, but off the record, I am the firefighter, the plumber, and the sole gatekeeper who crawls through dark cable conduits at 4 in the morning to fix frying circuit boards. I am not documenting this ordeal to seek sympathy or validation from anyone, but rather to reveal how a ruthless corporate machine can be dismantled using its own bureaucratic weight. I watched my life's work be callously stripped away while sipping bitter, lukewarm station coffee from a chipped ceramic mug. But before I unpack how I completely unraveled a multimillion-dollar corporate empire with nothing more than a legal notepad and an overlooked regulatory clause, I have an important request for you. Please take a quick moment to hit the subscribe button and like this video, as it really helps our channel reach other hard-working professionals who are reaching their breaking point with toxic workplace management. When I first took this job 16 years ago, this facility was nothing more than an abandoned textile warehouse overflowing with nesting birds and rotting floorboards. That all changed during the notorious blizzard of 2012, when the central power grid collapsed and left the surrounding medical supply chains completely stranded in freezing temperatures. While the facility's owner, a vanity-driven tycoon named Arthur, was vacationing in St. Tropez, I spent for continuous days living out of a sleeping bag in the utility closet to manually hotwire our emergency diesel generators. I personally reconfigured the main transfer switches by hand under the beam of a dim headlamp, preventing millions of dollars worth of temperature-sensitive pharmaceuticals from spoiling in the unheated bays. That desperate rescue mission put our facility on the map, transforming us overnight into the primary emergency distribution node for 3 adjacent states. Ever since that icy nightmare, I have memorized every single mile of fiber optic wiring hidden beneath our elevated flooring panels, right down to the specific cooling fan in Sector B that requires manual lubrication every 3rd Tuesday. I took immense pride in being the invisible pillar holding up this high-stakes operation, fully believing that my dedication provided me with complete job security. As I surveyed the main security wall near the intake lobby this morning, I stared at the framed state operational certificates that had accumulated dust over the past decade, printed clearly across every single environmental compliance permit and high-voltage safety clearance was my full legal name, Nora Vance, listed as the sole certified master operator. The state regulatory boards, the Department of Transportation, and our corporate insurance underwriters recognized only my signature as the legal guarantee that this massive complex would not burst into flames. Arthur owned the land and paid for the building, but my license was the only thing legally allowing those heavy iron security gates to open every morning. Yet, despite my deep-rooted importance to the plant's daily survival, Arthur had scheduled an urgent mandatory staff assembly in the main boardroom for 9 o'clock sharp. My lead technician, a brilliant young engineer named Marcus who possessed an unmatched talent for splicing high-speed data trunks, approached me with a deeply troubled expression. He warned me that Arthur had just pulled into the executive parking spot alongside his 24-year-old son, Julian, who had recently graduated with a generic business degree after failing out of 2 previous majors. Marcus noted that Julian was wearing a tailored designer sweater vest and carried an air of unearned superiority that instantly signaled incoming corporate disaster. I straightened my heavy leather tool belt and walked into the sterile boardroom, where the frigid air conditioning chilled the air to a miserable 65 degrees. Arthur sat at the head of the dark mahogany table with a bloated, triumphant grin while Julian sat beside him, casually swiping through social media on a golden smartphone. Arthur loudly announced to the gathered staff that Julian was officially taking over as the company's new chief operating officer to modernize our legacy infrastructure. Julian finally looked up from his phone screen, using insufferable corporate buzzwords like cloud native, synergy and disruptive optimization to describe his plan to replace our battle-tested physical hardware with cheap, automated web services. When I pointed out that our facility handles real-time emergency dispatches that cannot afford a single second of network downtime, Julian arrogantly dismissed my concerns as old-fashioned, utility-scale thinking. Arthur then delivered the real payload, announcing with a phony, sympathetic smile that I was being reassigned to the newly created role of historical data archivist. They were stripping me of all administrative access to the network and moving me into a tiny, windowless storage closet near the loading docks so Julian could run the plant. A quiet, icy calm washed over me as I realized that my 15 years of loyalty were being rewarded with a glorified clerical demotion and a substantial pay cut. HR slid a thick packet across the polished table outlining my new, insulting duties, which basically boiled down to digitizing paper logs and acting as Julian's personal administrative assistant. Julian smugly mentioned that my tribal knowledge needed to be documented into their cloud databases immediately so they could fully automate the infrastructure without my physical presence. To make matters worse, Arthur casually bragged that they had just finalized a massive $30 million logistics contract with a national pharmacy chain, purely because the client trusted my flawless safety record. They had literally used my name, my credentials, and my decades of unblemished compliance audits to land the biggest deal in company history right before shoving me into a broom closet. Instead of screaming or slamming my fists against the table, I simply accepted the new paperwork with a tight, professional smile that hid the storm raging inside my mind. I knew right then and there that I wouldn't need to sabotage a single wire to ruin them. I just needed to let them crush themselves under the weight of their own ignorance. My new office turned out to be an unheated, concrete-walled storage room located directly beneath the roaring exhaust pipes of the primary shipping bays. My desk was a wobbly plastic card table, and my chair was a rusty metal folding frame that squeaked violently every time I shifted my weight. Within 2 hours of the announcement, my phone buzzed with frantic text messages from Marcus, revealing that Julian was already demanding root administrator passwords so he could alter the cooling tower automation scripts. Marcus panicked, knowing that Julian's complete lack of system engineering knowledge would likely overheat the primary server cores within a matter of hours. I instructed Marcus to comply fully with every written order Julian issued, making sure to document every single instruction in the official digital work logs without offering any unasked advice. I told him explicitly not to fix any minor configuration errors unless he received a signed, written directive from the newly appointed Chief Operating Officer. I then turned my attention to the dusty stack of cardboard boxes occupying the corner of my closet, labeled as historical compliance archives from the past 15 years. As I sliced open the heavy packing tape on the top box, clouds of dust exploded into the damp air, illuminating the neglected binders that held the key to Arthur's entire fortune. I began methodically reading through our state infrastructure grants, emergency management agreements, and comprehensive commercial liability insurance policies. Hidden within page 47 of our primary municipal operating permit was an uncompromising mandate stating that the facility's license was legally bound to my master certification. The legal clause explicitly stated that if the designated master operator was removed from operational oversight, the state had to be notified within 48 hours, or the plant's operational license would be instantly revoked. Furthermore, our multi-million-dollar insurance policy for the national medical contract contained a mandatory rider stating that any change in senior technical leadership required a 90-day review period before active operations could continue. Arthur and Julian had reassigned me without notifying a single regulatory agency, effectively operating a high-hazard data facility completely outside the bounds of state and federal law. Over the next 24 hours, I sat quietly in my dimly lit storage closet, meticulously crafting formal notification letters to every single regulatory agency overseeing our facility. I attached certified copies of my formal demotion letter signed by Arthur, alongside the exact legal clauses showing that the company was now in severe violation of its operational permits. I also drafted a comprehensive disclosure document for the state fire marshal, pointing out that Julian had disabled the manual emergency override valves on the cooling towers to cut power costs. While I was typing out the final legal notice to our primary insurance underwriter, I heard a loud crash echoed through the drywall behind me, followed by Julian screaming in frustration about a failed database migration. He had attempted to run an unverified auto-scaling script on the main server cluster, completely locking out the emergency dispatch routing network for the entire regional hospital district. Marcus walked by my door a few minutes later, giving me a silent nod to confirm that he had documented Julian's reckless command in the official incident log. I placed my signed regulatory notices into stamped, certified mail envelopes, feeling a cold sense of satisfaction as the trap snapped shut. Bright and early on Thursday morning, 3 black sedans carrying state infrastructure inspectors and an auditor from the insurance board pulled into the facility's main parking lot. They bypassed the executive offices completely and walked straight down the main corridor, demanding to see the certified master operator listed on the building's primary operating permit. Arthur sprinted out of his office in a full panic, sweating profusely as he tried to explain that his son was now managing the operations with cutting-edge software. The lead inspector coldly informed Arthur that operating a critical infrastructure node without a licensed master operator on active duty was a major class to state violation that carried immediate cease and desist penalties. When Arthur frantically tried to claim that I was still supervising the floor as the senior compliance archivist, the insurance auditor pulled out my mailed disclosure showing my forced demotion and pay cut. Within 30 minutes, the regulatory team issued a mandatory shutdown order for the entire data center until a full compliance audit could be conducted by state officials. The resulting fallout was swift, catastrophic, and completely brutal for Arthur's long-standing business empire. The national pharmacy chain immediately invoked their emergency termination clause upon learning that the plant was operating without valid regulatory insurance, instantly pulling their $30 million contract. To prevent a complete loss of regional emergency services, the county municipal board stepped in and placed the facility under temporary government receivership. Arthur was forced to liquidate a massive portion of his personal assets just to pay off the staggering civil fines levied against him by the state environmental board. Julian's brief, disastrous tenure as chief operating officer ended in absolute disgrace, leaving him with an unerasable reputation for incompetence across the local tech sector. Marcus was promoted to senior field supervisor, ensuring that the remaining operational staff maintained their jobs under fair, professional working conditions. As for me, the county receivership board offered me a lucrative short-term consulting contract at triple my previous hourly rate to oversee the facility's complete regulatory restoration. I now work on my own terms from a spacious, windowed office overlooking the main server hall, equipped with brand new ergonomic furniture and state-of-the-art diagnostic equipment. I spend my days training brilliant young technicians like Marcus, teaching them how to maintain complex mechanical systems with integrity and deep technical respect. Arthur was forced to sell his remaining shares in the company at a massive loss, entirely stripped of his executive authority and banned from entering the property without an escort. Every now and then, I look at the updated master operator certificate framed neatly on my new office wall, carrying my signature alongside the fully restored legal permits. I learned that true authority doesn't come from a fancy title on a door, but from the quiet mastery of the foundations that keep the world running smoothly.